We have already defined mapping for the controller in the application. Now let's define routing for the controller and action method. So let's add one more controller inside a controller folder, as you can see over here. So let's add a new controller to understand the concept of routing. So add controller. As we are working in the ASP.NET Core Web API, so we need to choose API controller, right? So we need to follow this hierarchy. You can see API, then common. Under that we need to follow this API, and under this we can see we are having three options: API controller empty, API controller with read write actions, and API controller with actions using entity framework. So since we are learning from the scratch, so we'll go for the API controller empty. So let's click on this, and I'm clicking on the add button, and it's loading. And you can see by default it is giving us the name value controller.cs. So controller is already is automatically added by the this application. We can say that this is a suffix, right? And value is the name of a controller, so we can change if we want to change, but let's keep it same. And I'm clicking on the add button, and you can see our value controller is added in our application, right? This is our value controller class, and this class is basically inheriting from the controller base class, right? And it is having the attribute API controller, and let's remove this route attribute for a while. And inside this controller I'm going to add two action method, right? Name it whatever we want, right? Let's copy this and create one more action method. Let's change the name of this method to make it differentiate, right? Get data, let's suppose get result, and we are making the return type of this method string, right? At this point of time, do not focus on the return type of this method. We need to focus on the routing, and let me return some message. Hello from get data method, and similarly we need to return some method or some message for this method, right? So now we need to focus on the concept of routing, and as we know that routing is basically used to map the incoming request for a particular controller and action method, right? So let's save the changes, and now I'm going to define the routing for the action method. In the last video I have already discussed that we have two types of routing. First one is your conventional routing, and the second one is attribute routing. But we need to focus on the attribute routing, right? Because attribute routing is widely used. So for defining attribute routing on the top of the action method, we need to decorate with the attributes. So we, in the square bracket, we need to write route, and then we can define our URL, right? Whatever we want to send from the browser. And before defining this, let me take you to the definition of this, and you can see this this route attribute is available in the route attribute class, which is being inherited from the attribute class and iRoute template provider, and this is available in Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.MVC namespace, right? And it is a constructor in which we are going to call it, and this is a template in which we are going to pass a URL, right? So let's go back to the this, and now we need to pass let's say we are passing get data, right? Now we have defined attribute routing for this action method, right? Similarly, let's copy this and define attribute routing for this method also, right? And now we have defined for get result also, right? So we are done. We have defined attribute routing for both of the action method, right? So in the browser, for calling this action method, we can simply directly call by defining this get result name, or if we want to call this method get data method, then we can simply write get data in the URL and it will basically call this method, right? So let's see into the picture. Let's save the changes and let's copy this URL, right? And let's run the application and let's see into the picture. Now in this URL we need to append that URL which we defined for the this action method, and now we can see that it is calling hello from get data method. It is giving the output, right? Let me put a breakpoint to see whether the request is going to there or not, right? Let's refresh. Oh sorry, I'm reloading the application, and now let's hitting this. Now you can see our request is hitting to this get data method, right? Let's continue, and now it is giving the output hello from get data method, right? Similarly, we can call this action method by defining this string in the URL, right, in the browser. So let's see into the picture, and now let's define this. Now we can see it is giving output hello from get result method, and let me put breakpoint for this also, and let's hit again. You can see our control is coming to get result action method, right? And it is giving the output as expected hello from get result method. So this is how we can call and define attribute routing in the top of the action method inside any controller, right? Now let's say we want to append API in front of this URL, right? So let me copy this and paste it to the next action method also, right? Now let's save the changes and run the application again. So it depends on you if you want to append this API word in your URL for calling any of the action method, right? And now let's say if we are calling this time get data, right? Let me append this. Now this time you will get 404 error saying that resource is not found. Because why? Because we need to define this whole string in the URL, right? So for that we need to basically define API / now get data. Now it will give the output accordingly hello from get data method, right? Similarly we can do for the get result also. So along with the API we can pass get result calling. Now we can see hello from get result method, right? So this is how we can define a simple routing on the top of the action method inside any controller in the ASP.NET Core Web API application, right? So depending on your need, we can define any pattern for calling it in the URL in the browser, right? So that is all for attribute routing.